Repair Clinic encourages you to perform this procedure safely. In this video, we will show one or more of these icons to alert you when to use caution. Most tiller repairs will require some disassembly of the product. Before you attempt this, make sure the engine has cooled and the on-off switch is in the off position. To avoid spillage, we recommend performing these procedures with little or no fuel in the tank. To remove the tine assemblies, tip the tiller forward so it rests on the fuel tank and tine guard. Note the orientation of the tines. Then remove the retaining pins and pull off both tine assemblies. You can remove the tine drive shaft by using an adjustable wrench to rotate the shaft counterclockwise. You can use a hammer to help fully remove the drive shaft. Reinstall or replace the tine shaft by threading it clockwise into the left side of the transmission housing. Align the worm gear bearing on the shaft and fully seat it in the housing. The bearing should be recessed approximately 1/4 inch. Replace the seal. Align the retainer and fully seat it. To access the worm gear, use a Phillips-head screwdriver to unthread the screws securing the housing cover. Then pull the cover off. Confirm that there is sufficient grease in the housing and that the housing gasket is in place. Then realign the cover and secure it with the screws. Properly align each tine assembly on the tine drive shaft. And secure them with the retaining pins. To remove the trigger handle assembly, first depress the tabs to release the air filter cover. Now use a 10mm wrench to loosen a locking nut to release the throttle cable from the bracket. Use pliers to detach the cable from the swivel. Disconnect the stop switch wire connector. Next, use a 7/16" socket and wrench to unthread the nut and bolt securing the handle assembly to the brace. Detach the throttle cable retaining clip. Unthread the adjustment knob and remove the bolt to fully release the handle assembly. Reinstall the trigger handle assembly by realigning the handle arm. Then insert the bolt and thread on the adjustment knob. Align the arm in the brace and secure it with the nut and bolt. Use the retaining clip to secure the throttle cable to the lower handle assembly. Now insert the cable into the swivel. Position the locking nuts and washers, and tighten the nuts to secure the cable. Be aware you may need to adjust the tension on the cable. Connect the stop switch wire connector. Replace the air filter cover, and return the tiller to its upright position. To access the clutch drum and bearing, use a 5/16" socket to loosen the flange bolt, securing the engine assembly to the transmission housing. Detach the throttle cable retaining clip. Lift off the engine assembly and set it on a sturdy surface. Now use a 10mm socket to remove the bolt securing the engine flange. Lift off the flange and use a large gear puller to remove the clutch drum and bearing. Insert a large bolt and nut into the clutch drum and bearing, then use a small gear puller to separate the two components. Reinstall or replace the components by first aligning the clutch drum in the bearing. Now insert a bolt, nut, and washer through the clutch drum and bearing. Slide additional washers onto the bolt and thread a second nut. Use a socket and wrench to tighten the nut to fully seat the drum in the bearing. Remove the outer nut and washers so you can insert the bearing into the engine flange. Slide the washers back onto the bolt and rethread the nut. Tighten the nut to fully seat the bearing in the flange. Unthread the nut and remove the bolt and washers. Replace the flange on the engine assembly with the flange bolt facing the fuel tank. Thread and tighten the bolts to secure. Reposition the engine assembly, making sure there is no gap between the flange and the transmission housing. Tighten the flange bolt to secure. Secure the throttle cable with the retaining clip, and the reassembly will be complete.